Now it's our pleasure to welcome the Honey Foundation for Israel to the Aspen Jewish Community Center today. The Honey Foundation is a venture philanthropy focused on building strong and enduring Jewish communities in Israel, led by entrepreneurial rabbis and spiritual leaders from across the religious spectrum, all the way across. Today, they support more than 300 rabbis and their communities. Our speakers are Bill Lipsy, founder of the Honey Foundation with his wife Amy, and the president of the foundation, Rabbi David Hoffman. And I'm delighted to say Bill and his wife Amy have a home here in Snowmass and are proud to be part of the Aspen Jewish community. Would you all join with me in welcoming them? Thank you.
Alan, thank you. You hear me okay? First I want to say a thank you to you, Ellen, and a thank you to Mendel, to the entire Jewish community, that what goes on here is remarkable. And it doesn't happen almost anywhere else in the country where there are tens of thousands and sometimes millions of Jews. And so the fact that it's happening in Aspen, Colorado is a testament to all of us who come to Aspen and also to those who organize and create the space for this. So I just want to say thank you. It's really a privilege. And I'll also say, I'm one of the people who called Mendel and said, could I be on your speaker list? So it's still going on. There's still 50 people who are hostage in tunnels in Gaza. 20 are thought to be alive. Sirens happened again this past Shabbat evening. Houthis sent missiles to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Millions of Israelis ran to their shelters. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis who are still in the reserves. I had a conversation the other day with one of our Honey Fellow rabbis. His name is Donnie Segal, Rabbi Donnie Segal. He's got a community in Jerusalem, and I spoke to him from his reserve army base. He told me the average age of his unit in the reserves is 52 years old. Rabbi Donnie is 52 years old. That's the reality. That's what we're not reading about this, but that's Israeli society right now. That's who's fighting this war. The IDF has acknowledged that suicide is the second leading cause of death in the Israeli army after operational duty. And by the way, that the second leading death, but cause of death, it doesn't include off-duty officers. And so the numbers are higher than are reported. Since October 7th, and this is a rather terrifying statistic, since October 7th, 25% of Israel's population is said to be suffering from or has suffered from PTSD. 1/4 of the people of Israel. The IDF reports that 12% of the reserve soldiers, these 50-somethings, have reported multiple PTSD symptoms after combat duty in Gaza. A couple of months ago, our team was in Israel, and while we were there, we had the privilege of spending some time with Rachel and John Goldberg-Polin, Hirsch's parents. In a very emotional conversation, Rachel confided to us that she's holding two realities in her life at the same moment. She said, and the context of the conversation was about losing her son. And she said, it's as if I was raped. This is a quote. It's as if I was raped and I'm still being raped and nobody is coming to save me. That's her one reality. Then she said to us, in the same voice, I am so blessed to be living in the state of Israel at this moment. I feel blessed that I have my son. For the years I had my son, I'm so blessed that I have my daughter and my husband, and that's my reality. I'll just summarize the non-summarizable, that there is a collective trauma that's engulfed Israeli society, and it's real, and our people are suffering deeply. With all these statistics, with all these personal tragedies, with the reality of an ongoing and it seems endless war, with internal strife, with battles of Jews against Jews, inside Israel, outside Israel, with all of this, I'm extremely optimistic. And I believe we have a real reason to be optimistic. And I'll just say this is not the rose-colored glasses, naive kind of optimism. David Wolpe was here last week. Rabbi David Wolpe was here last week, and he said something, and it really triggered for me why we should be so optimistic. We're living in a moment of miracles. With all this bad, we're living in a moment of miracles. Just think about this community, a little bit of what I just said as I started the conversation. With David Wolpe, there were over 200 people in this room from Aspen because it was a UJA talk, so it's doubtful that it was people who were just here for the week visiting and wanting to give to the Aspen UJA. More than 200 people came to hear David Wolpe. 2 Shabbats ago, the Aspen Reform community, the Aspen Jewish community, had 550 people for a Shabbat morning service on the top of Aspen Mountain. 550 people. I'll just say 550 people don't go to shul in the middle of very Jewish New Jersey on a regular Saturday morning. Okay? It was remarkable. And then right here, and also at the Aspen Jewish community, the Reform community, Aspen hosts multiple Jewish-themed events like this, sometimes 2, like is happening tonight, every single night of the week. I've been here for 25 years with my family. It's better now than it's ever been for Jewish people to have a Jewish life in Aspen. It's why I'm so optimistic about what can be for us as Jews, what we can do just by observing what's happening right here. But I have another reason to be optimistic. It's, I'll say, the most important reason, and that's Israel. Israel exists now. Sovereignty in Israel hasn't happened for 2,000 years, and all of us happen to be alive now. I'll just say, this is a giant blessing, and we should take pride in the blessing, but we should feel a sense of chiyuv, of obligation, of necessity to care for. And so I'll just say that's the real reason to be optimistic. Now, a quick highlight, commercial reminder for those of you who don't know of what the Honey Foundation is. And then I'm going to be very excited to be in conversation with our president, Rabbi David Hoffman. The Honey Foundation is a foundation that my wife and I started 9 years ago. We provide salary stipends, skills training for community rabbis, and most importantly, we bring them together. We cause rabbis to know other rabbis. It sounds really crazy. I'll also tell you it sounds crazy that somebody other than the people in the communities would pay the rabbis to be rabbis in Israel. But because Israel pays only a certain segment of rabbis, it didn't exist until we started this 9 years ago. We now help support over 300 rabbis across Israel. Alan said this, across the religious spectrum. It's every kind of Jewish expression you can imagine. Israelis don't really like the language that we Americans use, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. They like their own words, but I'll just say they've created Judaism in a way that many, many, many people can access it. And the Honey Foundation is helping them by paying them salaries, by supporting them with professional training, by bringing them together so they learn from each other. And until we did that, it didn't exist. It was an idea that we had 9 years ago after we had lived in Israel. I'll say it was a good idea. I know it. It's now more than a good idea. Now it's a societal necessity. What's happening in Israel, those statistics I talked about a minute ago, it's changed Israel forever. The role of community and the role of professional community rabbi has never been more important than it is right this minute. And the Honey Foundation is the center of helping build an open and diverse set of religious and spiritual communities. So I want to stop there, if you can help me with the podium. And I want to invite Rabbi David Hoffman to be in conversation. So I should use this one.
Let's move. Bill, there's water behind you.
Okay. So, David, it's great to see you. And I want to do something to start that I don't have on my question list. But we wrote down that the title of our session would be what it means to be a Zionist post-October 7th. And so I'd love you to talk about that. What do we mean?
First of all, thank you guys. And it's great to be here, and it's special. Bill. Sarah is also my partner in working at the foundation, and of course, Amy. Well, I think like many things in the world, they have stages. Does that make sense? Different periods, and people and ideas go through different stages. And I think Zionism in the 20th century, this was the agenda. It was physically saving Jews. And think about what I'm saying. It was physically saving Jews. That is to say, there were populations of Jews in the 20th century that were literally needed a home, needed a refuge, because they could no longer stay in Morocco or in Ethiopia or other places in North Africa or in Syria, Iran, Iraq, and of course, Europe. Israel in the 20th century was a physical refuge, a place of security for people who were literally homeless. And that's what the project of the 20th century was securing their physical safety. And that was huge. and that saved the Jewish people, literally. And part of that was creating an ideology that rejected the diaspora, that said that the diaspora itself created ideas of passivity and rejected ideas of power and created Jews who were simply like sheep going to slaughter, as people used to label us, people who were not physical and embodied. And in some ways, so what Zionism started to be, aside from the physical safety of it all, was it created an ideology that rejected the passivity of the diaspora and basically said the values that we were going to embrace, first of all, we're going to reject what was taught in the yeshivot, because that was passivity in Europe and for another time. And now we're going to go ahead and create a new Jew. Does everybody hear that? A new Jew who was powerful and she was strong and they settled the land and they provided for security. And that was the 20th century. And in some ways, like many pendulums, it overshot. That is to say, the project of the 21st century is now that we have saved all of these Jews and we have created a physical home, is a return to Judaism and to Jewish culture and to all of the things that many on the Zionist project of the 20th century rejected. And to go ahead and say, no, we're not going to go ahead and reject that. And we're going to go ahead and reclaim our Judaism. And we're going to go ahead and explore what it means to be Jewish and how that meaning can live with power and at home. And so that is really the big move of the 20th century, 21st century. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I just have to interrupt you. I'll tell you that I've been in a lot of conversations when we lived in Israel, and people struggled with identity for Amy and Bill. They wanted to know who we are, because I wear a kippah when I'm in a shul, but normally I wear no kippah. And so, but I would attend an Orthodox synagogue with knowledge about how to participate in an Orthodox synagogue. But we turn the lights on and off on Shabbat. And so who are you? Are you religious? Are you secular? Who are you? And it's very big for Israelis, I learned, that I had to fit into a certain box. And the way that I internalized what you're talking about is that most non-Orthodox Israelis had taken on Israelism as their religion. Yeah. That being Israeli was the religion. And Judaism, it's for somebody else.
Great. Does everybody here, first of all, Bill used many important words. Identity. What is identity? Israelism. What is Israelism? One of the things that we have witnessed, and you were talking about the opportunities of this moment and why you're so hopeful, is that people know about the kibbutzim around the Gaza envelope, yes? Those were the kibbutzim that were decimated in October, right, on October 7th. And it happens to be that many of those kibbutzim are committed, very committed secular Jews that never wanted to have anything to do with religion or Jewish identity types of conversations. And what we have witnessed now over the last year and a half are those communities coming to the Honey Foundation asking for versions, and I'm going to go ahead and say this very carefully, for versions of rabbis, because what they want to do is explore Jewish conversations. And when I say rabbis, I don't want you to simply have an idea that what they want to do is put on tefillin, or what they want to do is do Shabbat. What they really want to do is learn from rabbis of what it might mean to be Jewish. When confronted with existential moments of people trying to kill you and your community's decimated, people often will go ahead and ask questions. Wait a second. Why am I living here? Why am I living in a place where they want to go ahead and kill us? Why don't I simply, this is gorgeous to live here or New York. Why not just move to another place? Why, as a Jew, should I be living in Israel? And so these people are asking these questions, and what we're seeing is they're exploring their Jewish identity. They're thinking about how they are part of the Jewish story. And those are very Jewish questions, and so we're providing rabbis, and one of the things is, I was talking to Amy before, and I used the word secular rabbis, and Amy said, you better explain exactly what that means, because it's not intuitive whatsoever. That is to say, when Bill said we support rabbis from all of the spectrums, the most exciting thing occurring in Israel right now is we happen to know as American Jews, Judaism by denominations, right? They're buckets, whatever they are, some of them work, some of them don't. In Israel, the most interesting thing that's occurring is outside of those buckets, outside of that. And it's a blend of Israeli culture and language and music and other forms of identity and food. It's something literally that we're watching Israelis go ahead and create that is not only an Israeli identity, but a very deeply Jewish identity, and they're building it and exploring it. And we're providing, the Honey Foundation is providing the leaders who are allowing those people to open up those doors to explore that, and then those communities.
Yeah. All right. I took you down a road of identifying what is news, what is Zionism post-October, October 7th?
I think it's huge.
I know. I want you to introduce yourself a little more fully here, because I think it's, you and I have been in Chevruta for 25 years.
We have. In some way, we've been doing this for 25 years.
Okay, so I'll just say I'm his longest running Talmud student ever, and so we could call that failure, or we could call that endurance. So David,
it's one of the great pleasures of my life.
Okay, you don't have to lie here. Okay, so here's fact. David was on the brink of becoming the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, and he called me and said, I want to join you. I desperately tried to talk him out of it. I said, you don't really know what this is like. This is totally a startup. It's an idea, and you're set. Your whole future is great. A, I can't pay as much as they do. B, I don't know if this will be a job in a few years. Yet you chose to do it.
Thank God.
So tell us why.
Yeah, in some ways it was crazy. In other ways it made all the sense in the world, I think. It was a startup and it was scary, but let me just share something about my passions. My passion is opening up, my passion is rabbinic education, and having a rabbi open up doors. I loved the school that I was at was JTS, and we, in essence, were a rabbinical school. That's one of the things that we did. An important thing. It was a thing that actually captured my imagination and my passion. And we created and helped train rabbis. And these were people who opened up doors to a story that was larger than life, that allowed people to enter into this door and experience something that was beyond themselves. That moment for me is the most exciting moment of the possibilities of what a rabbi can actually go ahead and do, which is allow people to join this expanse, this transcendent idea of the Jewish story and Jewish history. That's what I loved. I loved training, and that's where my passion was. And the truth of the matter is, and then the second thing that I loved was community. And one of the ways in which I created community, and we did this at your company back in the day, was over pizza, learning with a great bunch of people who were super smart, who are interested in thinking about larger questions of meaning and how Judaism might go ahead and be a conversation partner in those larger questions of meaning. And the truth of the matter is, that's exactly what all of us continue to do, is we're helping allow rabbis and spiritual leaders, and I use the word spiritual leaders because some of the people that we support in Israel don't even call themselves rabbis, don't want to call themselves rabbis. Understand that they call themselves chiloni, which in English is secular, but they're not secular. They're deeply, deeply Jewish. Their lives are embedded in Jewish learning, and they want to go ahead and inspire other people to be a part of that journey. So the work of the Honey Foundation, first of all, takes place, in my understanding, is the beating heart of the Jewish people. At the Aspen Jewish community, and I live in New York, the New York Jewish community is exciting, and it gets inspired by the heart, and the heart is Israel. As we know, the majority of Jews will end up are living there in Israel. So the future of the Jewish people is actually going to be affected by what occurs in Israel. And so our work is about Jewish inspiration, it's about community, and it's the role of spiritual leaders, rabbis, within that journey. So I actually sort of feel those are my passions.
Thank you. Okay, good. It's important that you know a little bit of who you're speaking with. So you were in Israel for the last 2 weeks, and you got back to New York just before Shabbos. You spent Shabbos with your wife, and then you deserted her again to come and hang out with us for a few minutes. I know it was impactful, and you traveled all over to different communities, talking with all of our rabbis, participating in some of their training sessions. Share a little bit with us, would you?
You know, we were all just in Israel, as you said, a couple of months ago. And so we vividly, and you experienced, Israel has been a country at war for the last almost 2 years. And so we experienced that firsthand, and we felt the texture of what that was like. But I'll tell you, the last visit, they're exhausted, really, really tired. And that's not like a metaphor. They're like literally tired because they have been woken up at all hours of the night for 3 weeks, over and over and over again. So they haven't slept. And so they're dealing with all of this trauma, and they have not slept. So that's adding to it. That was just another level of what was going on. I'll make 3 observations. The first observation is that the amount of trauma Israeli society is experiencing is unimaginable. I got off the plane, washed up, and then I went to a conference. And it's a conference by a woman in an organization whom we help sponsor. And
Her name?
Her name is Rachel Atun. Sorry, I'm also tired, I'm not quite sure. Right. So her name is Rachel Atun, and she has in essence created a field. And so I went to this, and it was really outside of Jerusalem. There were 400 people who were in attendance, 400 people. And the theme of the conference was Livui Ruchani. Livui Ruchani. So what is that? So I think one way of translating that is spiritual care. Livui Ruchani, spiritual care. Ruach, spirit. But the first word is tremendously interesting. Livui means accompaniment. So in essence, it was a conference for people who accompany other people at deep, deep moments of need. Imagine this, 400 people, professionals, who were there, who focus in on accompanying people. And these are people who do not attend to physical needs. These are people who attend to spiritual needs. And the opening talk was given by a rabbi. Imagine this, to 400 people. And the majority of people in the room were medical and health professionals in all aspects of that. And these were people who were focusing on trauma Trauma from the war, trauma from living, trauma from disease. And in essence, we had a rabbi who gave the opening talk, who was talking about, let me just tell you, the larger theme was the role of that which is unseen in healing, and the ways in which Jewish wisdom can actually be a part of the process of healing and navigating trauma. 400 people were listening to every single word that this rabbi had to go ahead and say. And so I just want to open up by going ahead and say the first need is that spiritual care, people who are accompanying others, is a need that we are going to go ahead and see in the, but trauma is not something, we'll speak about this, but trauma is not something that is dealt with in a week or in a month or in a year. This is a continuing, evolving type of exercise. I want to say one of the rabbis, you were talking about Donnie Segal, Bill already mentioned him. He is a rabbi who Bill was talking about, he's 52 years old and he's on reserve duty. He's a honey fellow, and that means we have identified him as a special leader, and we go ahead and help support him and give him training and give him mentoring and help him do his project. His project, one of the main projects that he's focusing in on right now is couples, their couple therapy, not types of couple therapy that other couples go to, but the type of work that is needed, because you have people who have been doing reserve duty over the last year and a half for over 300, right? You have soldiers for 300 days. Do we even, and we're not talking about active soldiers. We're talking about fathers who are in their 40s and their 30s, who have 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids, who are leaving their families, going off to fight, and then have to come back to deal with their kids, and their wives are alone. So let me go ahead and tell you, and Shuli, my wife, like Lahavdil, being away from home creates a certain amount of tension in a marriage, right? And Aspen's very nice, but going away for 300 days, his project is helping couples deal with that and bringing Jewish wisdom. So that's just one aspect of the trauma. And as you know, we have a member of our team in Israel, a beloved member of our team, who's going through now a divorce. And she's going through a divorce, and we were sitting with her coffee when we were in Israel. Her husband served in a unit in the early 2000s in Lebanon, and he had PTSD. And they had been living with that, and the last 2 years has re-irritated that experience. And so he's had very acute PTSD. And she was explaining to us that, do you even realize, I mean, when I say this to you, I mean it to me, that 50% of individuals who have PTSD, if they're married, their marriages will end in divorce. That's an enormous percentage above and beyond regular issues. So that is an issue. Oh, you're going to ask a question?
Yeah, I do. I do have a question, but I didn't want to cut you off too soon. If there was more you wanted to say about the takeaways from being there, but you'll fill it in.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I want to move past, because I feel like I could talk about trauma, and I want to actually sort of move
I also
past.
want to leave time for questions.
I totally get it. I would go ahead and say the second need is the trauma is very, very significant, and the need for community. Last Shabbat, I was in a community called Efrat, which is about 25 minutes outside of Jerusalem. I was staying with one of our fellows. Now I want to go ahead and say, this fellow is very, very special. Her name is Rabbanit Shira Mervis, and she is the first Orthodox woman to lead a community in Israel. And she is leading a community because of the Honey Foundation.
Selected by her community.
Selected by her very conservative community, conservative with a small c. They are not feminists, but they identified her because she's exceptional, and everybody here would want her as their rabbi. And she's a tremendous community builder and leader. And so I'm having all of these meals over Shabbat, And people are coming over to me as they don't know me, but as the representative of the Honey Foundation of facilitating and allowing this to occur. Thank you. You just don't understand the role of community in helping us get through this horrible period. And the truth of the matter is, I don't. But these people are sharing that, in fact, community has allowed these people to get through the service of their husbands and the service of their wives going off to war. And they're thanking us over and over and over again. Shira shared with me, Rabbanit Shira shared with me this little idea which has transformed the community, and she's the most proud of it. A committee makes lunch. A committee of people in that community makes lunch for people to make sure that families where one of the parents is away on reserve duty, the kids are taken care of. It's a little thing. And she said, David, it's a little thing, and you probably don't get how important it is. But when you have one parent away and you have all of these kids and you have just to get through life, making lunches is actually really difficult. And so the community takes one little piece off of the responsibilities of families and allows families to get through this. And she was extremely proud of that. And the last thing I want to go ahead and say, which just to frame all of this, is that the interest in Judaism is a once-in-a-generation moment. I was talking to the rabbi here, and I was asking him, post-October 7th, do you have more Jews walking into the synagogue? Because I'll tell you this, in New York City, there are more Jews walking into the synagogue. And in Israel, that is also the case. And you can think about it so much more. Why am I living here? How do I fit into the Jewish story? Why am I sending my kids off to the army when we could go ahead and live somewhere else? How do I fit into this larger story? And I know that some people are thinking about, what do you mean? They live in Israel. Of course they're part of the Jewish story. But so many of them actually are part of Israelism. They're not a part of the Jewish story. They don't have the language to go ahead and think about that. So this moment, as difficult and as challenging as it is filled with opportunities to open up doors for people into the Jewish story.
So you just answered my next question. Well, so this is a blatant commercial, but we started a podcast about a year ago. I'll just say, because I was the host of the podcast, I was very doubtful that this was a good use of anybody's time. And so I'll just say now, having gone through it for a year, and we have 14 episodes, I invite you to listen. We have a lot of people listen to it, so I guess I was really, really wrong. But I'll say one of the questions I asked everybody on the podcast was, by the way, our podcast is called Honey from the Rock. The question is, do Israelis need Jewish community? You just said it. They live in Israel. They live by the Jewish calendar. That's how their lives are organized. What do you need Jewish community? We need it here. Why do you need it there?
You know, it's funny. I listen to your podcasts. And I listen to the fellows, and I actually think the question in some ways is so surprising. I like, how do you guys handle that, what Bill just said, the question, why do Israelis need community? And by the way, this last week when I was sitting coffee after coffee, I asked the Israelis in front of me, is that true? Do you guys really not have community? Because that sounds weird. And the answer over and over and over again is no. We first of all, the state of Israel is 6 times as large, the population, as its initial founding. And so back in the day, the government took care of things and helped people out, and people knew each other. But Israel has grown 6 times in the last over 60 years. It's huge, that level of growth. And the level of technology, just like us here. I have young kids at home. We sit in our little bubbles. And so the answer is with our technology and that our jobs are taking us away from connection. And so the answer is Israelis need community just like we in America need community. It happens to be that the secret of why that they're surviving this crazy, horrible, difficult period of a war is because there are communities that are helping people not be alone and not go through this together. The secret of the war is, in fact, that the government is fighting the war, but the people are taking care of the people. That is a grassroots moment. And by the way, you talk about miracles, that is a miracle. That is a moment that everybody in this room should be so proud of, that the Jews in Israel are taking care of one another despite any other types of boundaries. So Israelis need community, and I'll also add this, they need Jewish community. They need a language. They need ideas that allow them to connect to something that's larger. And one of the things that the Israelis kept on saying over and over and over again is that, we're going to survive this. And communities are going to go ahead and help us survive this. But what we need communities for is to move from surviving to flourishing. And that's the move of the next 10 years. And that's the work of the Honey Foundation. We're going to get through this, and we're going to survive.
All right, this is a 2-minute answer.
Sorry.
That's all you have available, is what are the big challenges to the Honey Foundation being able to execute on the mission of building strong, flourishing Jewish communities led by great leaders.
Right. So where's the president of the shul? Not here. Okay. So then I won't feel bad.
There you have a president of a shul just retired.
Everybody here knows this. Everybody knows this in some aspect of your life is the challenge of people paying attention. That is the greatest challenge of people paying attention. What do I mean by that? I mean the following. You hear a story, God forbid, of somebody's death, and the community responds, and they help the family out, and they come out and all of those nice things. But then that family has to deal with those emotional wounds and everything that begins to happen after the Shiva. And so one of the things that I have found in my work in the foundation is we gravitate to things that have simple solutions. We understand that. To buy an ambulance, it's simple, and it helps people out. But what about all of the people who are going to be helping out all of the people that walk out of that ambulance and go into the hospital and need to go rehabilitation and all of that? So what I'm saying is the work that we're involved in right now is, in essence, a slow investment that needs continued attention. The Jewish people has to pay attention to the people. The war's going to end. And there'll be other titles for people to go ahead and worry about and think about, and we'll move on to our next political this and that and the other thing in America and in Israel. But the question is, who's going to focus in on those communities and those people and the health of Israeli society? And the challenge is for us to lose our eye on that ball. And to understand that it's a long-term investment, where the investment's not going to go up 60% in 1 year. It's going to go up a percentage every single year, and we need to pay attention to that. So that's my concern, and that, I think, is our challenge.
Okay. So we'd love to take your questions. So please. Anybody? David, yes.
Do you find resistance among the traditional Orthodox communities that tend to be on the far right of the political spectrum and really control what's going on, that have, I guess, an impact on reducing the Zionism of Herzog and Golda and that whole left-wing, typical Jewish new stuff? Are you finding that they're fighting you?
You know, we said we were going to leave time for questions. We didn't decide between us who's going to answer which question. So
I spoke more, so.
So let me take a quick crack at that, okay? Israel's made up of a bunch of different segments. And when we say orthodoxy, orthodoxy is a big, wide spectrum. You just heard David talk about Shira Mirvis, Rabbanit Shira Mirvis, who's an Orthodox woman, who's the rabbi of a community chosen by an Orthodox community. Now,
Who, by the way, is living in an area that some people call a settlement.
right. Efrat is on the other side of what people call the Green Line. Okay, so, but the chief rabbi's office of Israel would not recognize Rabbanit Shira Mirvis as a rabbi. Okay, so if your question is, does the chief rabbi's office or the Haredi political system observe the Honey Foundation with any emotive response? I would say currently, no. It's a little bit of a worry because the Honey Foundation, what started as a little idea by Amy and Bill, has now become something rather significant in Israeli society. I mean, just think about the couple million people that 300 odd rabbis are touching. And by the way, some of these rabbis, it's not just in a community like this, they're public figures, especially post October 7th. They're the ones who are speaking at Kikar Chatufim, the hostages square. They're the ones who are running programs for the Jews, who 20,000 people come in a night, not only to protest. We hear about the protests. They come for Havdalah. They participate in Havdalah. Many of them have never participated in Havdalah ever, and these rabbis are creating these opportunities for them. So I do worry that the ultra-Orthodox infrastructure will be concerned with what we're doing. On the other hand, I want to say something really clear. Ultra-Orthodoxy is a fabulous life for ultra-Orthodox Jews. They close the door, though, to the rest of the Jews. It's a boundary that can't be pierced. If any of us just walked in to those communities, nobody would welcome you. You would be looked at with concern. What do you want here? Not, welcome, let me bring you in. And so, if that's what you were asking, that's my response.
Yeah, I also just want to say a fun little ditty, fun little story, which is the Honey Foundation in the last years has grown so much within Israeli society. So Bill and Amy and Sarah invited me back in the day. This was before I started working, to their first conference. This was the first conference of bringing rabbis together in all of Israel. I know what I'm saying is crazy, right? But it's true. The first conference of bringing communal rabbis across all denominations together. And I remember seeing Orthodox rabbis like running behind poles when the photographer was there because there were Reform rabbis in the room. That was back in the day, which was 5 years ago, okay? The last time we had a conference, when we brought 300 plus rabbis together at the Jewish Museum in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, the Orthodox rabbis were singing and dancing. So the level of acceptance and the movement of Israeli society, even within the last years, has been monumental and huge. So we're going to be more encouraged with that. And right now, by the way, we have fellows who are even more traditional than Shira Mervis. I think there was a question back there, and then Bobby.
Back now. So going back to the question on the flyer.
The question of what?
On our flyer.
The headline for
Yeah.
tonight's talk. What it means to be a Zionist post-October 7th. Do you think you answered that question?
I think
I guess you don't think we answered the question, so let's make sure we answer the question.
The foundation seems to be on a mission to build a network of rabbis.
Yeah.
When I think of Zionism, I think of the ZOA, I think of post-World War II, and the creation an Israeli homeland,
Oh,
a
yeah.
Jewish homeland. Okay, that's what I think.
I totally get it.
So I'm trying to figure out, tie that.
100%. I'm going to give you an image, but I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
What's your name?
Rick.
Rick. Thank you. You're asking a really important question which gets to the heart of our work, and I actually think the heart of ways in which, let me be explicit here, Jews in America can connect with what is going on in Israel, okay? I am not making Aliyah within the next 5 years. I live on the Upper West Side. I consider myself a Zionist, and let me tell you what I mean by that. The image that Zionists use, I would go ahead and say in the 1940s, and I'm forgetting of his name, but he had this image, which is, I think, very powerful. The purpose of Zionism in the 20th century was building the foundation for the house, was building the house so that all of these Jews could go ahead and seek refuge. And so everything that you're speaking about, and I think, by the way, I participated in American Judaism, and I'll let you speak in here, but everything that Zionism of my early days was thinking about Israel as a homeland and as a refuge for Jews. And that was amazing, and that was a great narrative. What I'm suggesting to us is that narrative has changed. It's no longer thinking about building the house and the foundation. It's thinking about what goes into the house, the Judaism that literally goes into that house. Now, let me tell you this. I, as a rabbi and as a Jew and as a father who speaks to other Jews, I could not be more excited about this project of thinking about, both for Israelis and Americans, the type of Judaism the renewal of Judaism that will go into that house. In my understanding of it, the only purpose for the state of Israel is so not only that Jews are safe physically, but it's so that Judaism can go ahead and flourish. And I think for the first time in my lifetime, as I understand it in my professional career, Jews are explicitly thinking about the flourishing and the growth and the renaissance of Judaism in Israel. I think that's the Zionist project, and I think, by the way, that's the project that we as Americans should be most excited about because it impacts my life on the Upper West Side. So that's how I would answer the question to the best of my abilities.
Fair enough.
Okay. And I think it's hugely exciting. And thank God.
Thank you for the question, because we did want to answer it.
Yeah.
Bobby, you had a question.
Well, I was going to pick up on what Rick brought up, which is imagine 5 to 7 years from now, with all that the Honey Foundation has been doing and that you continue to do. So paint a picture for us of what your vision is for what will be the results of that in the state of Israel,
Right.
in the Zionist dream 5 to 7 years from now, or 10 years from now.
Okay. So, fabulous question. Thank you. 6, 7 years ago, I was on a panel in Orange County. Orange County, is that where we were? No, in Palo Alto. One's very conservative, one's very liberal. I'm not from California. Anyway, I was interviewed afterwards by a woman who was at the time, she was the editor of The Forward. And look, the Honey Foundation was just a new idea. And we were just starting. And she asked me to tell her about the Honey Foundation. So I did. I gave her my, on 1 foot pitch. And she said, whoa, what kind of a time horizon do you have? That's a very long project. And I said, it's for my grandchildren's lifetime. So 5 to 7 years, it's too short, is the reality. It'd be my response to your question. What I do hope in 5 to 7 years is that there is measurable shift in the support of, the awareness of, and the acknowledgement of how powerful Jewish community is for Israelis. You know, when you go in a call, I always tell friends when they tell me, so people come to Amy and I, and they say, we're going to Israel. They know we lived there. Where should I go? And I always say, you're asking me the wrong question. You're going to hire a guide. They're going to show you all the rocks. Go look at whatever rocks they tell you to look at. Enjoy that, but save 2 days. And we will send you to people's houses and to the right coffee shops. And when you go in there, I want you to ask the people next to them about their life. What's it like living here right now? What they won't say yet is that I'm part of this amazing Jewish community. Now in Aspen, we might say that. My hope, Bobby, is in 5 to 7 years, more people start saying that. That's the mission in 5 to 7 years. I'll tell you, I also hit my dream is that the Honey Foundation isn't necessary. That's the real answer. Look, when we started this, I had no idea. I'm a business person. I started an investment company 30 years ago. My real success is the investment company is still there. So my dream happened. It happened. This one, I started this. I actually hope it goes away because that the need isn't there anymore. That's the real dream. Right now, 300 rabbis doing something to support them. Amy and Bill got really lucky in life. Not lucky enough to do this by ourselves. We turned the Honey Foundation from a private family foundation into a public charity. And look, let's be fair. That's partly why I asked to speak in Aspen. We need help. We need the Jewish world to say this is a project that, as David talked about, is critical for the future of the Jewish people, not just the Israelis, but also the Americans. It's the embrace of Judaism as normative and part of our lives, however we seek that. So,
just one thought. We certainly want to make ourselves obsolete, but I'll be less modest than Bill. I think that in the next 5 years, we are going to have a measurable, clear change. And that is to say, I happen to know Bobby, so one of the institutions he's involved in is the Hartman Institute. And I would go ahead and say is that one of the reasons why more people are applying to the Hartman Institute to become rabbis, Israeli rabbis, to lead communities, is because for the first time, and I would say less modestly, because of the foundation, we have created a job called community rabbi. And so people see it out there, and they see other rabbis out there doing things. And so the hope would be that as those numbers are growing, those communities are growing, and the interest in Israeli Judaism is growing, that in the next 5 years, there are going to be so many more people who want to become community rabbis because they see the communities and they see other examples of spiritual leadership, and they get introduced to Judaism.
So one more personal point of success, I'll just say, sitting in the front row, is our daughter, Sarah. So Sarah is actually the CEO of this foundation. Sarah has a graduate degree in Jewish education from the Jewish Theological Seminary. She ran after-school religious school program at Park Avenue Synagogue in New York for 5 years, and then came to us and said, I want to work for the Honey Foundation. That's what I want to do with my life. And I didn't try to kick her out like I tried to get David out, but I did say,
Because I didn't live with them.
I did say I'm not paying you as much as Park Avenue Synagogue is willing to pay you. Sarah said, I don't care. And right now, she's a student at Hartman in Jerusalem, going back and forth to Jerusalem, becoming an Israeli rabbi. So I'll just say we already succeeded in the small success as a family. The big success, though, that you're talking about, it's the long game. By the way, it's how I invest money, Bobby. I'm a value investor. I'm used to looking at things that aren't working just right. And most people say it's not going to work forever. And I'll just say that's usually not what happens. Often what happens is people engage and they find ways to shift the scale a little bit. That's all we're trying to do now. We've identified something that's not working right, and we're trying to shift the scale. All right. We'll stay if anybody wants to talk further. Thank you all very much for being here.